What I want to do in today's video is take you through this tiny little pollinator garden. I want to share the plants that did really well and plants that I'm looking forward to growing next season. Just as a reminder, this is my first season here in Kentucky. This is a temporary garden, but I've been having a lot of fun trying to develop a small pollinator garden here in this steep sloping backyard. So one of the things that I do want to mention is that I've purposely not amended this soil, and I wanted to see which plants would grow the best in this Kentucky clay. And I've got a few plants that are doing amazingly well, and so we'll be looking to see how they do through the winter time. So let me turn the camera around and I can show you what we've got. Now when we got here, there really wasn't anything here except for grass, and I've been spending some time repairing the turf and just kind of expanding this small pollinator garden. And our adventure started all with adding these Oakland holly trees, and I am really excited about these because they're just starting to flower here, which means that they will be developing berries. And I've been able to find some wonderful garden centers here in Kentucky close to where I live. And I've found some native Kentucky plants that I have planted in here that are doing remarkably well, as you'd expect. So one of the seeds that I did try to plant, though I didn't give it enough time, and I'm looking forward to trying them next season, are these Linaria. I knew that these weren't going to, I didn't give them enough time to develop, but I couldn't help myself to plant some seeds. You can see they got these cute little, they almost look like miniature little snapdragons, and they come in these jewel tones. And Vita Sackville West talked about them in her book, In Your Garden. I did a video on that, and I'll leave a link in the description below if you're interested in seeing it. Now, the one thing that I would like to say is if you're interested in following along on seed starting for the 2025-2026 season, I will be covering that in my newsletter. It's free to join the newsletter, and I cover a lot of great garden design tips, and I will be covering the seed starting plans for the season this year in more detail than I will cover in any videos. So if you're interested in something like that, you can sign up for my newsletter. I'll leave a link in the description below. The first plant I want to start with is this Sedum. And it doesn't look like much right now, obviously, because we're here at the end of the season. But this was a complete pollinator magnet for me here in this garden. And I originally purchased this Sedum. I will put the variety name up on the screen for you. But I originally purchased this to use as part of the container display on the patio. It's got this great gray crocus blue foliage color. And then once it started to bud, I moved it out into the garden, and I actually divided it up into 3 plants. This is one plant, started off as one plant, so it was very economical to add this to the garden. It blooms later in the season, like sedums do, so it is a great source for food for the pollinators later in the season. So this is definitely one of the plants that did super in this Kentucky clay. Now, when I was in Michigan, I did not grow roses because I didn't have really enough sun, and the sunny locations that I had deer, and the deer love to eat, if nothing else, the buds off of the roses. So this plant here, I will share this with you. It's called Raspberry Cupcake. It smells wonderful. And I actually purchased this little rose at the local garden center here at the Lowe's. And it has filled out nicely here. And my understanding is that it should do well in this Kentucky clay. Now, it did do well in the summer. So the key is going to be to see how it does over the winter time. I was able to pick some of the flowers for bouquets, which was very nice because it's always nice to have your own flowers inside of the house. And this just smells heavenly, and I'm amazed. You can see buds on the plant even now here at the end of the season. If we look next to the rose, growing at the foot of the rose, I've planted one of the Calamintha nepeta. This is a white blooming catmint. This I grew in my Michigan garden, and this was one of my favorite plants. Now, this is a different variety. This variety is called White Cloud. I am going to try to grow this from seed with some winter sowing. We'll see how that does. But this is a pollinator magnet. Without a doubt, my favorite plant is this white blooming Gaura. This is called Whirling Butterflies. I mean, it is, again, it's the end of the garden season, so it's not as stunning as it typically is, but you can see it is still blooming. It bloomed the entire summer, and I grew this also in my Michigan garden. This plant has a great movement in the garden when it's windy. It's just a stunning plant. The pollinators love it, and I am really happy with how it is doing so far in this Kentucky clay. Now here I did plant a couple native Kentucky plants in this area. I've got this mountain mint here. I'll put the Latin name up on the screen, but as you can imagine, this did incredibly well. The pollinators love this plant. I need to make sure I keep an eye on it because this will spread. This is just a single small plant that I planted here. The other plant that is native to Kentucky that I'm growing here, and be careful because I don't want to really step on the soil too much, so I'm just going to reach over. But I do have a white blooming coneflower, one of my favorites. I love the white blooming coneflowers. This artemisia grew like crazy, and it's basically covering 3 of the coneflowers underneath there. So I'm glad that the plant is growing well, but I need to move this plant now that I understand how humongous it is actually going to grow. Continuing with, again, some native plants here. I got this is just a single plant. I got it as a small seedling plant, actually. This thing is doing great in this Kentucky clay. And this is Anise hyssop, and I will put the Latin name up on the screen for you. It's an absolute pollinator magnet. It's got these beautiful purple blooms. It is a bit more droopy than I was expecting it to be, so I don't know. I gotta see if that's really, I gotta read more about this particular variety of plant. But this is just a single little seedling plant that I got at the local garden center, and it is really growing well here, so I'm happy with that plant, especially because the pollinators love it. And then I did want to point out, I bought some seedlings. So these did not bloom this season, but hopefully they will bloom next season. These are pale pink coneflowers. I absolutely love this native plant. I had some of these plants in my Michigan garden. This is the light pink coneflower that has those droopy, delicate petals. It's just, in my opinion, it's an absolute stunner in the garden, and the pollinators love it. So this plant is doing great in this Kentucky clay. So now the plant that has the most sentimental value here in my garden is this beautiful Feverfew. And the reason that it's got a special place in my heart is this actual plant I brought with me from Michigan. And this was the last plant that my mom grew from seed before she passed away. And it was a little bit ironic because we sowed a bunch of Feverfew seeds and only one of them germinated, and that was this plant. When I first planted it here in Kentucky, it did not grow well. And I had it in the front garden, and so I moved it back here. And I am so grateful I did, because you can see this is just one plant, and it grew so beautifully, and I'm excited. I'll be collecting seeds from this particular plant in the hopes that I can continue to grow this plant, and when I see it in my garden, I'll remember my mom. I never grew Feverfew until my mom picked out Feverfew as one of the seeds she wanted to grow when we first did the seed starting competition for Garden Moxie. It's got a beautiful little bloom. It looks like a little daisy, and it gets a lot of flowers on it. The pollinators like it. It makes a great cut flower. It's a beautiful flower to have in your garden. Another good performer is this Spurge plant. This is called Ascot Rainbow. And in the autumn, you can see it starts to get these little orangey red tips on it. It has really done well here in this Kentucky clay. So this was a fun little foliage plant. And I'm glad that I got this plant because I really do like it, and it's adding a nice little focal point here in the pollinator garden. Now this plant here is called, this is an echinacea, obviously a coneflower. This plant is still blooming like crazy here in the autumn. I do have some seeds that I have set. This is Echinacea sombrero adobe orange, and it's got this great deep orange color, and these coneflowers will grow in clay, and as you can see, it is doing really quite well. And the thing that's cool is that orange color kind of gets picked up and matches the orange tips from that spurge over there. So that kind of looks pretty cool, I think. Well, that's it for this video. I'd love to hear what you think about the pollinator garden so far. And I'd love any tips on maybe some pollinator-friendly plants that you would recommend for this Kentucky clay garden for the springtime. That's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.